You ever drive past a place so many times that it becomes like background noise? That's how it was with the Ashwood Motel. I'd see it whenever it took Route 19 out of town. Just a faded sign leaning at a bad angle, letters half gone, the word motel still clinging on in chipped red paint. The building itself sat back from the road, surrounded by weeds and a cracked parking lot, like it was slowly sinking into the ground. Locals never talked about it much. They didn't have to. Everybody knew the story, or at least some version of it. Closed after the murders, shut down because of the fire. The owner went crazy. Every version was different, but they all ended the same way. The place went dark in the late 1980s and never opened again. Now, I've always had this itch, not the smart kind. The kind that makes you want to see for yourself, even when every part of you knows better. So the Ashwood Motel became one of those places for me. Every time I drove by, I'd slow down a little, glance over, and wonder what was still inside. One late October afternoon, just before Halloween, I finally made the choice. I'd check it out. Just me, a flashlight, a recorder, and too much curiosity. The driveway was blocked by a rusted chain, but I parked on the shoulder and stepped over. The asphalt crunched under my boots, broken glass scattered like frost. The air had that dead leaf smell, sharp and a little sweet, like rot hiding under it. The sign out front creaked as the wind caught it, not loud, just enough to remind me that things here still moved, even after decades. The lobby door was boarded up, but one of the side windows had the glass already punched out. Looked like kids had been using it as a way in. I ducked through carefully, trying not to cut myself, and landed in what used to be the lobby. That smell hit me right away, not just dust and mildew, something heavier, like old smoke that never left. The wallpaper was peeling in strips, revealing gray plaster underneath. A desk sat in the corner, drawers yanked out and overturned. Behind it, a wall of room keys still clung to their hooks, numbers printed in neat black ink. 101, 102, 103. For some reason, that detail got to me. The fact that the keys were still here, waiting, like nothing had changed. I walked down the main hallway, flashlight beam catching torn carpet, water stains on the ceiling, doors hanging crooked on their frames. The silence was thick, but not empty. You know how some silences feel like a pause, like something's listening back? That's what it was. Room 106's door was missing. Inside, two mattresses leaned against the wall, mold crawling up their edges. A chair lay on its side, one leg snapped clean. The bathroom door was shut. I don't know why, but I didn't touch it. I kept moving. The deeper I went, the heavier the air felt. My light caught faded graffiti on the walls. Get out. Blood still here. Run. Teenager, sure. But the letters looked old. The spray paint faded to brown, like the words themselves had been aging with the motel. At the very end of the hall was a door painted black, different from the others. No number, just black, with the paint blistered and bubbled like it had been burned. I stood there for a long time. I don't know how long. The kind of long where your ears start inventing noises just to fill the space. Then, tap, 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 from the other side of the door. 3 slow knocks. I backed up, heart pounding, telling myself it was just the building settling, just wood shifting after years of rot. But the taps, they'd been too steady, too deliberate. That's when I realized every other door in this hallway was open, broken, or gone completely. Every one, except this one. And yet something behind it was still awake. I left that hall without opening the door. Not yet. But I knew before the night was over, I'd be back.
I don't know how long I stood in that hallway after hearing those knocks. Could have been a minute, could have been 10. Time didn't feel normal in there. My flashlight beam kept trembling across the walls because my hand wouldn't stop shaking. I remember staring at that black door. The paint bubbled like burned skin, and wondering who decided to paint it in the first place. Every other door was numbered, neat and clean, but not this one. Like the motel itself wanted to hide whatever was inside. And then there was that knocking. Slow, patient, like whatever was in there knew I was on the other side, waiting for me to answer. I didn't. Not then. I turned back down the hall, forcing myself to keep moving, telling myself I'd just check out more of the building before making any dumb decisions. The carpet under my boots was soft in places, soggy in others, like water had been trapped underneath for years. It gave a little every step I took, almost like walking on a sponge. I remember thinking if I pressed too hard, my foot might go straight through the floor. The wallpaper had patterns of little blue flowers, faded almost to white. They peeled in long strips, curling at the edges, like the walls were shedding their own skin. My light landed on an old framed picture still hanging crooked. The glass was cracked, dust coating the surface so thick I could barely see through. I wiped it with my sleeve and found a smiling family, probably stock photo guests the motel had hung up to look friendly. The mother's face was scratched out with something sharp, not drawn over, scratched. Deep, angry marks that tore the paper underneath. I put it back fast. I checked another room, number 108. The door resisted when I pushed, sticking to the frame. When it finally gave, it let out this long, dry creak that echoed down the hallway. Inside was worse than the others. The curtains were rotted, shredded at the edges, swaying slightly, though there was no breeze. The bedspread was still there, patterned with faded green swirls, but the middle was blackened, burned straight through. The ceiling above had the same dark stain, as if smoke had curled up and left its memory there. The smell hit me hard. Not fresh smoke, but that old sour ghost of it, mixed with mildew. My stomach turned and I had to step back. That's when I noticed the Bible. Every motel has one, right? But this one was lying open on the dresser, the pages warped with moisture. My light caught the words and I saw lines scribbled over in red ink. Not random doodles, not kid stuff. Whole passages blacked out, words circled again and again until the page tore through. One line was underlined so hard it nearly cut the page in half. They shall seek me, but they shall not find me. I didn't stick around after that. Back in the hall, I kept telling myself this was just vandalism, teenagers, pranks. That was easier than thinking of the other option, that something in this motel was waiting. The silence had grown heavier. It pressed on my ears until I could hear my own heartbeat louder than my footsteps. The kind of silence where you expect something to break it any second. And then, it did. Not from the black door this time. From above. A dragging sound. Slow, right above me, as if someone was crawling across the ceiling on hands and knees. The hallway had no second floor, just the roof. I froze, light pointing up, breath caught in my throat. The sound kept going, steady, deliberate. A pause. Then another drag, right above me. I thought maybe an animal had gotten in, a raccoon maybe, but it was too heavy, too slow. Animal scurry. This was pacing.
I forced myself forward, step by step, listening to it follow me overhead. Every time I moved, it moved. When I stopped, it stopped. That's when the air got cold. Not just chilly, cold enough that I could see my breath in the beam of my flashlight. In late October, sure, it was cool outside, but not this cold. Not inside a sealed building. I wanted to leave, I really did, but something pulled me deeper. Not curiosity anymore, more like the place itself was steering me. I reached the end of another hallway where a faded exit sign glowed faintly red. No power should have been running, but there it was, humming dim against the wall. Beneath it was another door, rusted but still shut tight. As I reached for the handle, the dragging above stopped. Silence again. Too sudden. Too exact. I whispered out loud without meaning to, my throat cracked and thin. Hello? No answer. Then a whisper back. Not words. Just the sound of breath pushing through teeth. Right against my ear. I spun around so fast my light swung wild across the walls, catching only peeling wallpaper and empty rooms. No one was there. But the air? It shifted, like someone had just stepped past me. I didn't open that exit door, couldn't bring myself to. Instead, I backed down the hallway slowly, keeping the light sweeping from wall to wall. That's when I saw it again. The black door. Only I wasn't in the same hall anymore. I had turned. I had taken another corridor, but somehow there it was again. Same bubbled paint, same burnt look, same silence pressing around it. And just like before, tap, tap, tap. 3 slow knocks, this time closer, louder, more impatient. I stood frozen, my throat so dry it hurt to swallow. The longer I stared, the more wrong it felt. The door wasn't just sitting there. It was waiting. I don't know how I knew it, but I did. That door wanted me to open it. Not now, not later, but soon. And the motel, the whole building, it wanted the same thing. I must have stood in front of that black door for a long time. I couldn't tell if it was 5 minutes or half an hour. My flashlight was still aimed at it, my wrist aching from holding it so steady, and yet I couldn't bring myself to lower it. The thing about silence is, it doesn't always feel empty. Sometimes silence feels full, packed tight, like a lung ready to burst. And standing there, in that hallway, staring at that warped black door, the silence was swollen with something waiting. I thought if I moved even an inch, it would notice. Finally, my legs reminded me they were human. They started to ache, shaking under me, so I forced myself to step back. Just one step. The carpet squished faintly. The door didn't move, didn't knock, didn't creak. But the light, I swear the light from my flashlight looked weaker when it hit that door, as if it was being swallowed. Every other wall, every other frame reflected it back at me. But the door, it absorbed the glow like ink absorbs water. I whispered again, this time not to invite, but to test. Anybody in there? The words didn't even echo. They fell flat, like the air itself had smothered them. So I walked. Slowly, painfully, turning away from the door, dragging my boots one after the other, fighting the pull in my chest that screamed to look back. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. I knew the motel wasn't built this way. I had studied the blueprints online before I came here. The corridors should have been short, direct, simple rectangles. But now, every step carried me further without reaching the end. It reminded me of those nightmares where you run toward a doorway and it just keeps sliding away from you. Except, this wasn't a dream. When I finally reached the end, I realized I wasn't at the exit, not at the lobby, not at the front desk. I was back at the room where the Bible lay open, room 108. The door was still ajar, the burnt mattress still visible inside. But something had changed. The Bible was gone. The dresser was bare, dust settled in a perfect rectangle where it had been. And yet the smell of smoke, the acrid bite of burned pages, hung in the air stronger than before. I stepped in slowly, flashlight trembling across the walls. The curtains stirred again, just a little, like someone had brushed past them seconds before I entered. That's when I heard the sound. A faint whisper. Too faint to be words, but too clear to be wind. Coming from the bathroom door. It was closed now. I was sure it had been open when I first came in. I stood in the center of the room, staring at the door. My throat was dry, my chest tight. I thought, don't open it. Every horror story tells you not to open it. But my hand was already moving. The brass knob was freezing cold when I touched it, so cold it stung like ice. I turned it anyway. The door swung inward with a reluctant groan. Inside was pitch black. My flashlight beam struggled to push into the space, like the air was thicker in there. The sink was rusted, the mirror cracked in spiderweb patterns, and in the middle of that cracked reflection, something was moving. Not me, not my light, something else. It shifted behind me in the glass, pale and hunched, with long arms that didn't belong to any human shape. But when I spun around, the bathroom was empty. The mirror was lying, or telling the truth about a world I couldn't see. I backed out of that room fast, almost tripping on the soggy carpet. I slammed the door shut, chest heaving. The hallway felt worse now, heavier, like the air itself was aware of me. That dragging sound started again above, slow, measured, back and forth, as if something was pacing the ceiling directly over my head. This time, I didn't freeze. I ran, boots thudding, light swinging, breath tearing through my throat. But the strange part, no matter how fast I moved, the sound above kept pace, always right there with me, not behind, not ahead, directly above. When I finally skidded to a stop, gasping for breath, I realized where I had ended up. The black door. It waited for me like it knew I'd circle back eventually, like the motel itself had led me in a loop on purpose. And for the first time since I arrived, the door wasn't closed anymore. It was open, just a crack. Enough to see the darkness waiting inside. Enough to hear the faintest whisper sliding out. Come in. I swear the air changed at that moment. The hall behind me seemed to fade. The walls pressed tighter. The only thing that felt real was that door. And even though every cell in my body screamed, "Don't do it," I knew I was going to step through.
I don't remember choosing to move. 1 second, I was staring at the cracked open door. The next, my boot was already pressing against the carpet, nudging it wider. The sound it made, it wasn't a creak. It was more like a sigh. A long, low exhale. like something had been waiting, patient for years, and finally got what it wanted. The door drifted inward, the gap widened, and the darkness inside swallowed everything. I stepped in. The first thing I noticed was the temperature. It dropped instantly, like walking from a desert into a freezer. My breath puffed white in front of me. I could feel it cling to my skin, heavy, almost wet. The second thing I noticed was the smell. Not rot, not mildew, worse. It was like a hospital room after a fire. Burnt hair, antiseptic, smoke, and something sweet underneath, like spoiled fruit. The third thing was the silence, that suffocating silence. It wasn't empty, it was thick. So thick that when I swallowed, I swore I could hear the sound travel down my own throat. I raised my flashlight. The beam cut through dust and fog. At first, it hit nothing, just endless black. But then, shapes began to emerge. Peeling wallpaper, patterned with faded roses. Floorboards warped and swollen. A dresser tipped sideways, drawers spilling out like tongues. And in the corner, a chair. A wooden rocking chair, facing the wall. It was moving. Just a little, just enough to let me hear the faint, rhythmic squeak of wood against wood. No one was sitting in it. I froze. The light shook in my hand. And then I heard it. A clock. Somewhere deeper in the room, a clock was ticking. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Tick, tick, tick. It was the only thing that sounded alive. I took another step forward. My boots groaned on the floor. The rocking chair slowed, then stopped. The tick kept going. Minute after minute, I wandered deeper. Every few steps, something shifted. The air got colder. The smell grew sharper. The shadows leaned closer. I tried to check my watch, but the glass face was fogged from the temperature. I wiped it, and that's when I realized. The hands weren't moving. The second hand was frozen, but the ticking, it kept echoing in my ears. At some point, I reached the back wall. My flashlight beam caught on a mirror. It was tall, cracked down the middle, leaning against the plaster. And in the glass, there I was. Only not. The reflection showed me, yes, but it also showed something else. Someone standing right behind me. Pale, thin, its mouth wide, stretched too far. Eyes, dark holes dripping into its cheeks. I spun around. Nothing. Turned back to the mirror. It was closer. I staggered back, boots scraping on the floor. My flashlight beam jittered, landed on the floorboards. That's when I saw them. Handprints. Dozens of them, pressed into the dust all across the floor. Some small like a child's, some large like a man's, some impossibly thin with finger lengths that didn't make sense. All pointing toward me. The air thickened. My chest felt crushed. Then, the clock stopped ticking. The silence that followed wasn't silence at all. It was breathing. Slow, heavy, wet. But it wasn't mine. For hours, or what felt like hours, it didn't stop. Every time I moved an inch, the breathing grew louder. Every time I whispered, "Hello?" the air pressed harder against my ears. At one point, I swear I felt a finger brush the back of my neck. Cold, damp, lingering. I spun, light flaring against peeling wallpaper. Nothing. And yet, the smell of burned pages grew thicker. Like that Bible, like something wanted me to remember it. Time dragged. The chair creaked again, rocking on its own. The mirror flickered with shapes. The handprints deepened, like fingers were pressing down into the wood. And then, the voice, whispering. Not words I could understand, just syllables, long, drawn out, almost chanting. My stomach twisted, my chest screamed to run, but my legs stayed frozen. That's how the night passed. Not with screams, not with footsteps, but with hours of waiting, breathing, whispering. The weight of something patient, ancient, hungry, circling around me in the dark. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been 1 hour, could have been 10. All I know is, by the time the first hint of dawn pressed through the cracks in the boarded-up window, I was still alive. But I wasn't alone. Because as the gray light seeped into that cursed room, I heard the whisper again. This time, clear. And it used my name. The first light of morning didn't save me. It just revealed what the dark had been hiding. I stood there, frozen, as pale sunlight leaked through the boarded cracks. At first I thought, finally, it's over. The whispers went quiet. The breathing faded. The rocking chair stood still. But then I noticed something. The dust. The thick layer of dust across the floorboards, on the dresser, on the mirror. It was disturbed. Not just by my boots. Everywhere. As if dozens of feet, dozens of hands had been moving in the room all night. And I hadn't seen a thing. I tried to steady my breath. Tried to convince myself that I'd just imagined it. But as I shifted my weight, my boots left new tracks in the dust. Deep. Clear. And beside them, more tracks appeared. No sound, no movement. Just there. As if invisible feet were walking right next to mine. I backed toward the door. Slow. Careful. My flashlight flickered, dying, but the weak morning light was enough to show me the mirror again. It was different now. The crack down the center had spread wider, jagged like lightning. And in the reflection, I wasn't alone. There were dozens of them. Shapes behind me, staring. Some tall, shoulders scraping the ceiling. Some small, crouched, their hands clutching at their knees. Their faces were smudges, as if the mirror itself refused to show them clearly. But their eyes burned through the blur. I blinked, hard, looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Looked back at the mirror. Closer. Every blink, they moved. Every breath, they leaned in. Until I couldn't take it anymore. I bolted. The hallway outside should have been a relief. It wasn't. Because the moment I stepped out, every door along the corridor slammed shut, Bang! One after another, echoing like gunshots. Dust rained from the ceiling. The final door at the end, the exit, slammed the loudest. I was trapped. I forced myself forward, hands shaking, heart hammering, every step heavy with the thought that something was walking right behind me. I didn't dare look, didn't dare check the mirrors lining the hall. But I could feel it. A shadow pressing against my back, breath brushing my ear. And then, my name. Whispered again. But not one voice. A chorus. Dozens of voices, all layered, all dragging my name through their teeth. By the time I reached the exit, my legs were jelly. My fingers clawed at the handle, yanking, pulling. It didn't budge. Behind me, the whispers swelled, louder, closer. I slammed my shoulder into the door. Once, twice. On the third hit, it gave. The light outside blinded me. That the motel didn't let me go. When my vision cleared, I wasn't outside. I was back in the lobby. The front desk empty, the Bible still burned. The same clock on the wall, its hands spinning wildly now, forward and back, forward and back. I spun around, desperate, trying to make sense of it, and that's when I saw her. A woman, standing behind the desk. Her dress was from another time, faded blue, hem torn, buttons missing. Her hair was gray, hanging in strings. Her mouth didn't move, but her voice filled the room. You shouldn't have stayed the night. Her head tilted, slowly, too far. Bones cracking like dry twigs. Her eyes rolled back white, then locked on mine. Now, she whispered, you're part of it. And the lobby changed. The walls peeled, the carpet curdled, the desk rotted into splinters, and the voices, those endless voices, rose again louder than ever, screaming, whispering, begging, chanting, all at once. I dropped to my knees, covering my ears, eyes shut tight. But even in the darkness behind my eyelids, I could see them. Dozens. Hundreds. Faces pressing in. The sunlight outside never reached me. Not really. Because the Ashwood Motel doesn't let go. Not in the night, not in the morning, not ever. And if you think this is just a story, drive past that empty road. Look for the sign, because the motel is still there, waiting. And once you step inside, it's already too late. They say the Ashwood Motel was torn down in the late 80s. That's what the official records claim. If you go digging through the county archives, you'll find a yellowing folder stamped closed. Inside, photographs of a collapsed structure, bulldozers parked outside, a final inspection form signed and dated. Case closed. End of story. But people around here, they'll tell you something different. The locals' version. Old-timers at the diner, the ones who sip black coffee until the cups rattle, will lean in and lower their voices. They'll tell you that the motel was never demolished at all. That if you drive past Ashwood Road late enough, when the fog hangs thick, the outline of the building still appears, like a mirage. Not whole, not solid, just enough to catch in your headlights before fading again. And if you're unlucky, sometimes it doesn't fade. Sometimes you drive right up to it. The police reports. The sheriff's office doesn't like to talk about it, but once in a while, a rookie slips up, leaves a file out in plain view. One report, dated 1997, describes a call from a young couple.
They claimed they'd found a motel while driving home from a concert. Checked in for the night, room 6. By morning, they were gone. No trace. Their car abandoned by the roadside, doors wide open, headlights still on, as if they'd simply stepped out mid-drive. The report ends with a single line, scribbled in the margins. Room 6 was condemned in '72. Doesn't exist anymore. The Highway Patrol. Truckers talk too. Long-haul drivers, the kind who've seen everything the interstate can throw at them. They'll swap stories over stale sandwiches at rest stops. One man swore he pulled over near Ashwood Road to check his rig. While he tightened a strap, he noticed lights flickering in the trees, a neon glow, red and buzzing. The word, vacancy. He thought nothing of it, drove on. But when he looked in his side mirror, he swears he saw people, dozens of them, standing just beyond the tree line, all watching. The drifter's account. And then there's the drifter. Nobody knows his real name. Some call him Red, others Hollow Eyes. He drifts from town to town, sleeps under bridges, mutters to himself. But if you buy him a meal, he'll tell you the same story every time. That he checked into the Ashwood Motel in 1983. That he stayed one night too many. And that everyone else who slept there never came out again. And that he only survived because he never closed his eyes. Not once. Not for a second. When you press him for proof, he'll lift his shirt, show you the words carved into his skin. Stay awake. The records that don't match. Archivists and historians, people who live in dusty basements with microfilm reels, say the motel's paperwork doesn't line up. For one, the building permit has 3 different dates. The fire inspection lists a name, Eleanor Voss, as manager. But when you look her up, there's no birth record, no death record, just that one signature, neat and perfect, across decades of documents. It's as if she never lived and never died. She only existed on paper and always tied to the motel. The return. Every decade or so, someone tries to find it. Amateur ghost hunters, YouTubers with night vision cameras, even bored teenagers on a dare. Most come back empty-handed. Some don't come back at all. And a rare few, they return, but they're different. Their eyes glazed, their voices low. They don't answer questions directly. They just repeat the same phrase. Check in. Don't check out. The Last Witness. There's one more piece. In 2009, a hiker claimed she stumbled onto the ruins while cutting through the forest. She described the building as half there, walls leaning, windows broken, but the air heavy with the smell of bleach and smoke. Inside, she found the lobby, the desk, even the old Bible, though its cover was warped and blackened. But what froze her wasn't the furniture. It was the guest book. The pages were crisp, new, and the last entry was written in her own handwriting. Name, date, time. She swears she never touched the pen. So what's the truth? Was the Ashwood Motel really demolished? Or does it linger, like a wound that refuses to close? Is it just a ghost story, passed down to kids and thrill seekers? Or is it something worse? A place that feeds, that takes. Some say it's not the motel that's haunted. It's the land itself. That long before the building stood there, something older, something darker, had already claimed the soil. The motel was just a vessel, a trap, built to catch anyone passing by. A warning. And maybe you're thinking this is just a story. Maybe you're laughing, shaking your head, saying motels don't eat people. This is just campfire nonsense. Maybe. But next time you're driving late, when the road is empty, and your gas tank is low, and you see a flicker of red neon through the trees, ask yourself this: is it really worth pulling over? Because once you step inside, they say the door closes behind you. And no matter how loud you scream, no one ever hears it. And that's where the story ends. Not with answers, but with the silence of an empty room and a key that never unlocks the way out.